Presentation. Characters. Balance. Complexity. Long ago, the 4 elements of good fighting game design were used in harmony. But then, everything changed when the modern devs attacked. Only the mid-sized and indie devs, master of all 4 elements, could bring quality to the FGC. But when the community needed them most, they faded into obscurity. 3 years after the new fighting game boom, and I discovered a new game, a licensed game called Avatar Legends: The Fighting Game. And although its presentation and gameplay are great, it still has a long way to go before it becomes a staple of the genre. But I believe Avatar Legends can be a great fighting game. Hey, hello everyone, Jazz the Gamer here, and today, now that the closed beta is over and the full game is almost out, I'm here to answer the question of whether or not you should buy Avatar Legends: The Fighting Game when it comes out on July 23rd. Yes, you should! It's freaking awesome! And I'm here to tell you all about why that is. First things first, it is only $30 for the base edition, and then the deluxe version is $50. Which is honestly cheaper than most fighting games on the market right now. So, if you want to play this game, then it's not going to be a huge financial commitment. First things first, presentation. This game looks phenomenal. The menus are visually appealing. This key art for each character on the character select screen looks gorgeous, and even has buildings and structures from their home nation in the background, which is such a cool detail. And the actual game's animation is incredible. I'm no animation expert, but all apparently 900 plus frames of hand-drawn animation that went into each character were all worth it. These animators were so thoughtful in both modernizing the original art style, as well as capturing what made it so timeless, but also in adding as many references as they did. It's probably not Dragon Ball FighterZ levels of every move is a reference, but dang is it close. I also think the way that they convey important gameplay element through visuals is easy to understand and highly stylish. Azula's just frames are indicated by a white flash of her outline, EX moves have the character's respective nation symbols pop in for a brief second, etc. I would also be remiss if I didn't mention the hysterical smear frames whenever someone loses a round. They are precious, you guys, keep them in the final version. Here's a brief compilation of my favorites. Anyway, on to the gameplay. The core gameplay and gameplay loop is spectacular. This game is very polished. Every character feels distinct, no matter if you're fighting as or against them. And one thing that this game does that I haven't seen many fighters do, past or present, is make defense feel super fun. The flow system makes smart defense not only accessible and intuitive, while also having reasonable weaknesses and limitations, but it also just feels so good to just dodge and weave around your opponent's moves. Not a whole lot of fighting games make the defensive aspect that entertaining, so I think Avatar already has their foot pretty firmly set into the door of fighting game staples with this alone. Another thing that makes this gameplay loop so fun is that this is one of the most mobility-driven fighting games I have ever played. So much so that I'd argue in terms of freedom and versatility and movement, it's on the same level as Melty Blood, Guilty Gear Plus R, and Exerd, Marvel vs. Capcom 3, and maybe even Darkstalkers levels of freedom of movement. Now, I think the fact that this is a brand new game that I can actually compare to older titles as far as good qualities just kind of proves how much the devs are learning from the older games and applied it here. Finally, and this is more of a fascinating quirk as opposed to a brilliant gameplay decision, there is no air blocking in this game. This is a weird thing considering most other mobility-driven fighting games have this feature, or something similar to it. I guess it was to incentivize more aggressive use of air mobility rather than it being a safe mobility option all the time. In which case, screw what I said about this not being praised. Because using something as simple as air mobility to incentivize aggressive play through a limitation as opposed to a dedicated mechanic or actual penalizing of defensive play like many modern fighting games do is genius. Now, this isn't saying that I don't like any games that do this. I love games like Street Fighter 6, Guilty Gear Strive, and a bunch of others that also do this stuff, but it's just nice that there's such a change of pace. Another thing too is how I'd argue the game is aggressive by nature rather than by design. Let me explain. A lot of games feel like they're kind of meant to be aggressive, like you are supposed to play these things in a always hold forward WM1 mentality, right? Guilty Gear Strive, Street Fighter 6, just to name a couple. But if there aren't safeguards like that in place, then it's entirely possible for games to go on the other end of the spectrum. Games like Samurai Showdown or even Injustice. Games where defensive play is not only incentivized, but also rewarded. And I'm not dissing any of these other games. These are all great games that I really like for completely different reasons. I love the emphasis on offense in Street Fighter 6 and Strive, and I love the emphasis on defense in games like Samurai Showdown. But this game is more so focused on playing the neutral game, which is one of my favorite aspects of any, and I mean any, fighting game. I love when games focus on the neutral game rather than focusing on offense or combos or defense or all that stuff. I also think the meter system is really interesting just because of the sheer amount of ways to earn it. The chakra point system makes meter management both intuitive and thoughtful because it's not just the standard, oh, you hit people a bunch, you get meter now. No, you kind of have to earn specific points, either by doing certain actions like hitting big combos, using flow. You can even just use flow to get chakra points by just holding down the flow button for a little bit, so maybe that's something that players should incorporate more into their game plan, as well as critical hits, which I will explain later. Anyway, on to the characters. The characters, like in the show, are the highlight of the game. Each of them has such immense love, care, and attention to detail put into them. Not just in their animation, which is top-notch 2D sprite work, by the way, but also in gameplay. Every character is such a complete package that I need to spend a decent chunk of this video talking all about them. Aang is a little mobility freak and a mix-up trickster, just the way he should be. Fighting an Aang player that knows how to get the most value out of his mobility and mix-ups gives you the same feeling I'm sure Zuko had throughout all of Book 1 trying to catch this little menace. Every character has what's called critical hits. These are character-specific actions that reward you in chakra points. And if it's an attack, a launcher for combos. These are achieved by fulfilling certain actions that reflect the characters. One of Aang's is called Trickster. To achieve this, you have to do an aerial drop into his crouching medium kick. This is my favorite one solely because it just launches people into the flipping stratosphere, recreating the moon landing almost beat for beat. Speaking of the moon, let's talk about the guy that rizzed it up. Sokka is one of my favorite characters from a design perspective. His kit is seemingly intentionally undertuned, but in a way that promotes creativity. Or at least he should be, but I'll get to that in a sec. In that way, he kind of reminds me of young Joseph from JoJo's Heritage for the Future, where none of your games are going to be handed to you, and it's not even like you have to play that much better of a fundamental game than your opponent in order to win. Nah, you just got to pull out the most utter bullcrap from your back pocket in order to squeeze out a win. And that is exactly how Sokka should be. We'll talk about how I don't think he is that in a sec. One of my favorite matches in this beta was me playing a Sokka against a Zuko player. One strategy that worked almost surprisingly well was throwing the boomerang in the air, specifically the one that goes up and arcs back down. Safe to say I caught him off guard a few times, and it was very funny. They caught on, of course, but I eventually started using it as a way to close in and not just as a surprise tool. Needless to say, it was a very mind-expanding match for both parties. I mostly played with Dao as my support character, who gives Sokka a unique level up for his sword the more times you land attacks with it. Past 10, you get the cinematic zoom in and so many combo opportunities. I'm sure that Sokka players could optimize 4 to 5 sword attack combos, or maybe even more. I played with Dao for simplicity and damage, but I'm sure Yue and Suki let him do some insane stuff too. I think my biggest problem with Sokka is that his damage is way too high. I think Sokka should be a character who has to earn his damage. but I certainly don't think he should be doing like 45% damage just because he has some chakra points to spend. Still with only single-digit sword levels with P and Dao support, by the way. And I think P and Dao should just accentuate the idea of him having good damage potential, not exaggerating it in the way he currently does. Alright, Zuko. Being one of my mains in this game, it's safe to say that Zuko is incredibly fun. I would know since I only main fun characters, as everyone knows. Zuko support characters are all super interesting. Mei if you want a more projectile-oriented gameplay, and Ron and Shaw if you want a more aggressive/mobile one, and June if you want a more mix-up heavy Zuko. This combo in particular is one of my favorite combos simply because I made it up myself. I'm sure someone else has already come up with this combo, or at least something very similar to it, but if I ever get really good at this game, it's something to look back on as my first big step in getting good at this game. His main defining mechanic, however, is the redemption gauge. The more this gauge is filled up, the less his special move cancels cost. He has multiple ways of filling it up, like combos, his counter, critical hits, and if Mei is your support character, then his projectiles do too. I love his blue spirit super, it looks cool. That's it. Korra, okay. Korra. How did you fudge up this time? Okay, I'm not a massive Korra fan. I really need to rewatch the series just to know where my true feelings on it lie. But man, is Korra fun in this game. She was the last character I got to take into a real match, but she is such a fun character to not only play as, but also to fight. Granted, every character is, aside from Azula, I guess, who just kind of puts you in the blender and yeah, you're just kind of cooked, but I'm getting ahead of myself. I remember hearing that one source of inspiration for her playstyle in this game was Soul Bad Guy from Guilty Gear, and I can see it. I don't have much to say about her. Katara. Okay, Katara is a very unique character, and not really in a way that makes me want to play her. She's a mid-range zoning character with good mix-ups, and I'm honestly struggling to find anything interesting to say about her. She probably has my least favorite spread of support characters just because, like, hey, do you want to be schmoving more? Do you want to be zoning more? Or do you want combo opportunities? Which, I don't know, man. She kind of has it in some regard, regardless of what support you pick. So it kind of just more so feels like, hey, what do you want to focus more on rather than how would you like to play this character? She's the character I've seen the least online, and I don't think it's because she's boring. But rather, I think the game is still being figured out, and Katara seemingly doesn't have super unique strength. I'm sure when she gets more developed, she could be a monster to fight against. Toph. Toph is the pure embodiment of fun in this game. One way I like to describe her is a big body character without the big body. One of my favorite ideas is the devs basically saying with her, are you struggling to get people in the corner? First off, no you're not, this move exists, and second off, just make your own corner and pull it towards you, idiot! And if that doesn't sound like the embodiment of Toph in fighting game form, I don't know what is. By the way, I would love to get this can't corner people, just make your own corner, idiot meme idea I had circulating. That sounds kind of funny. She's basically just a tiny Aghanos from Killer Instinct, and I love it. Azula. She might end up being my main in this game. She's so goddamn cool. Azula has two modes that, depending on her support, you can either choose between or enter the other one if she loses a round. Basically, the old ladies let her stay in one mode, and then if she loses a round, she switches to the other mode. Focus mode is focused on movement, zoning, and mix-ups. In focus mode, she has two 8-way air dashes and a ground and air projectile, making her offense one to be feared. With the caveat of low health, of course. Low health by a shocking degree. Anyway, her Judy support lets you stay in this mode, and you want to know something crazy? If you lose a round with Judy as a support, she is replaced by a different Judy in the next round. I love unnecessary fighting game details, because the more of them you find, the more the devs actually seem like they care. My favorite thing about Focus Azula is how difficult she is. I love technical characters in fighting games, so Azula was already right up my alley. One complaint I do think is that I think her damage is a little too low for the amount of effort she has to put in. Like, I get it, we don't want execution gods being able to, like, take off 50% of someone's health bar just by being in the frickin' hyperbolic time chamber that they called the lab for way too long. But honestly, the amount of damage that she does right now feels insulting for how hard it is to actually get that damage. But no need to worry about that, because we're on to the thing that most definitely makes her my favorite character in this game. Firelord mode. This makes her the ultimate queen of Unga Bunga, with a literal firewall that is good for combos, pressure, and protecting against harmful malware, aka anti-zoning. She also gets lightning in the air, which is pretty cool. This is my preferred mode for the duration of the beta, but I really want to get better at Focused Azula. The lightning super is so cool. It's essentially Denjin Hadoken from Street Fighter 3 Third Strike turned into a laser beam, a chargeable projectile that's fully unblockable. There's also a just frame, where if you press the 3 buttons within a certain, very small window, it is near instantaneous and you can combo into it. I love the mind games you can do with this thing, but comboing into it is really such a pain in the azure. Aang and Zuko can also reflect it, which is a really cool detail that you just kind of don't see much anymore. Like, you don't see matchup specific details like that anymore, which is kind of a shame, but I'm glad it's here. Anyway, onto the weird stuff. First off, and most notable, you can pull up a pause menu in the middle of an online match, including the win screen. This is something I have never seen in any fighting game. I don't think it's inherently an issue, but imagine if this beta lasted longer and people discovered some crazy tech involving this oddity. I would not put it past a small subsect of this community to find something like that. Second off, Sokka has 2 glitches. 1, if Korra or Toph do their pillar moves and Sokka hits them out of it with his unblockable sword attack, he insta-kills them. At least I think that's why. All I have to go off of is this footage from a montage reel that I can't recreate anymore and a YouTube comment. And if they're right, please let me know. And the second glitch, look at this. Boomerang is way over here. Korra punishes the missed super. She gets hit anyway. How? And finally, you can hear the opponent pressing the rematch button. This is exactly as funny as you think it is. Avatar: The Last Airbender is one of my favorite pieces of fiction, and fighting games are my favorite genre of game. So it's no wonder that the idea of an Avatar fighting game was one I had wanted ever since I imagined it. And now that it's finally here, and it looks and plays incredible, it just feels like a dream come true. I want this game to be supported for as long as humanly possible, and I want to share what makes this game so cool, so I can get both the Avatar and fighting game community at large interested in this game. And if you're interested in this game, well, it's only $30 for the base version. And hey, I already pre-ordered the deluxe version, because I refuse to let this game fail. I'm going to make a lot of content on this game, so don't be surprised if this is all that you see on my channel for a little bit. I'm jazzed to have been here, and I'll see you when the full game comes out. Until next time.